This video will provide some guidance on walk cares and whether you should keep or cancel your long-term care insurance policy. If you don't know who I am, my name is Chris Dime. I'm a certified financial planner out of Edmonds, Washington, and I specialize in working with folks to and through retirement. So today I thought it'd be helpful to cover a quick refresher on walk cares and how that program works overall, as well as whether or not you need to keep the long-term care insurance policy you purchased to qualify for the exemption back in 2021. As a quick refresher on walk cares, this is Washington State's attempt at providing some financial assistance to those who might need long-term care expenses in retirement, which on average is most people. Most people are going to experience some level of long-term care event in retirement, and that's going to be quite a financial burden on the system of healthcare in general. And so Washington State is trying to get ahead of the curve and providing some sort of fund or benefit towards people who have not financially prepared or perhaps financially could not have prepared based on their means. This is also helpful because it reduces the burden on Medicaid, which as of now requires somebody pretty much to spend down or give away a few years in advance all of their financial resources to qualify for Medicaid, which is a pretty large leap of faith for not such a great care experience through Medicaid. To clarify, I'm referring to Medicaid, not Medicare, which is health insurance when you're pretty much over the age of 65. The Washington Cares Fund is a bucket of money that Washington State workers will be contributing to by way of certain payroll taxes. And that payroll tax is 0.58% of somebody's wages that will be going into the walk cares bucket. This bucket ideally accumulates enough to be able to pay people back the promises that it's making, which is $36,500 will be provisioned for every employee that they can use within 1 year of experiencing a long-term care event, assuming that they've vested into the program. And we'll talk about that. Now, regardless of your political persuasion, this does function as a redistributionist type of program whereby everybody's contributing a percentage of their income, and the more money you make, the more in a flat dollar amount you'll pay into this program. And then everybody has access to the same flat dollar amount of benefit. Obviously, that means that people that earn a higher wage will be taking on more of the burden, but that's how most of these public policies work. Basically, a ton of people are probably going to have long-term care expenses in the future. A lot of people won't be able to afford that, and so to provide some sort of social assistance, they developed the walk cares program. The $36,500 benefit number that was created for walk cares, that would roughly fund 20 hours a week of long-term care services for 1 year, which of course, if you've experienced a long-term care event yourself or you know a loved one who has, that may or may not have been their experience. So your experience may differ. And so of course, I don't think Washington State is trying to solve all problems long-term care with this program. They're simply trying to help provide some level of support and assistance so that people aren't completely destitute. And again, so that people don't have to quickly spend down all of their assets to qualify for Medicaid. Now, the median wage earner in Washington State makes around $52,000 a year, which at a 0.58% payroll tax would equate to around $300 a year being contributed to the program. Obviously, that means if you make far more than that, you'll be paying a much higher dollar amount for the same level of benefit as the person who made $52,000 a year. Somehow, Milliman blessed off last month that this program does look to be solvent, so rest assured I don't think Milliman would put their stamp of approval and their reputation on the line if the program did not appear to be solvent. Now, the minimum contribution to get access to the $36,500 benefit pool is 10 years of contributions. And rest assured, if you don't think you'll have 10 years more to make contributions because you're looking to retire in less than 10 years, Washington State does have some provisions in place to where you'll get access to a partial benefit, but just not the full benefit because you didn't make a full 10-year payment. For those of you who are looking for a refresher of the timeline of events that have transpired and will transpire in the future, in 2019, Jay Inslee signed into law the Long-Term Services and Support Trust Act, which essentially is walk cares. And then in 2021, we saw the ability for folks to apply for an exemption. And part of applying for that exemption was to obtain a private long-term care insurance plan. So we saw a huge surge for that. In July of 2023, we will see that payroll tax start getting levied, the 0.58% tax. And then in 2026, benefits will first be available through this program. And obviously doing the math, no, nobody will have funded 10 years of payments into that. That's when partial benefits would begin. Relative to exemptions, there's a couple of things I want to make sure we cover. Number one, if you're a veteran with 70% above disability rating, you can get an exemption from walk cares. They have a specific part on the website that you'll want to check out for veterans. And number two, if you're self-employed, you actually have to opt into the program if you want access to the program. Keep in mind that even if you are self-employed but you pay yourself a wage via W-2, that's considered an employee of Washington State, and you'd then be subject to the payroll tax. So it might behoove you to apply for an exemption whether or not you currently need it, if you forecast yourself paying wages in the future. The number one question I got back in 2021 was whether somebody who just had purchased long-term care insurance and then just obtained approval for an exemption from WA Cares, their number one question was, should they keep or cancel this long-term care insurance policy? Back in 2021 and up until very recently here in 2022, I was given very unclear guidance from ESD as to what the right course of action would be. For example, if somebody did cancel that, would they no longer have private long-term care insurance, and would there be some form of audit going around from Washington State, knocking on doors as to whether or not they had their policies? That big concern was because when applying for an exemption, it was purely based on attestation. There was no requirement to upload, proof of purchase or upload, your policy delivery acknowledgement from your insurance policy. Nothing like that. And so given that it was essentially just based on testimony, number one, I was thinking a number of people were going to attest to having long-term care insurance, but not. And if Washington State got wind of that, then they might start implementing some sort of audit procedure. In addition, some of the definitions of long-term care insurance and the way that the law was written, it wasn't super clear as to whether or not somebody had to maintain insurance. That being said, I finally heard back guidance from the Employment Security Department the other day as to whether or not somebody needs to keep their long-term care insurance policy to stay exempted for the program. And their guidance was no. No, you do not need to keep your long-term care insurance policy if you don't want to. That's essentially up to you, looking at your financial situation as to whether or not keeping it or canceling it is in your best interest. So that essentially gives you the freedom to decide objectively if you want to keep it or not keep it. If you've already achieved your exemption from WA Cares, you're permanently exempt. I'm pulling this definite answer of not needing to maintain this policy from emails I've received from the Employment Security Department, as well as directly from their website that explicitly states once you've achieved an exemption, you're permanently opted out from the program. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you want to keep or cancel your policy. Now, I say permanently because every law, as you know, is written in pencil. Could they come back and say, hey, we changed our mind, you actually need to have your policy now? Absolutely, they could do that. Yes, that would be a retroactive application of the law, and there is precedent for that, mostly in the tax space, not so much in the criminal space. So I'd imagine one of the biggest risks to canceling your insurance policy is going to be if the law changes in the future, you won't have coverage then. Now, here are some questions to consider as to whether or not canceling your insurance policy is in your best interest. Number one, we just talked about it. How confident are you that the rules won't change? Again, there's precedent for rules changing, so it's just something to consider as to how confident you are that Washington State won't change things. Number two, are there better uses of your money than the money you're spending on this long-term care insurance plan? Number three, has your health changed since obtaining this long-term care insurance policy that might make getting long-term care insurance in the future that much more difficult? Something to think about. If your health has changed and a life insurance or a long-term care insurance company might not want to issue this same policy at some point in the future because your health has changed, that might be something to consider when looking at canceling this policy. The caution I would have in trying to make an informed decision is to not fall prey to the sunk cost fallacy. That's essentially the way of thinking, I've already put in X amount into this plan, therefore that influences how I should look at things moving forward. I would highly encourage you not to do that. I would encourage you to look at where you're at today, the policy, the benefits, the costs, the expected costs, and make your decision based on that. Regardless of if you funded a policy for an entire year, that shouldn't have much bearing as to whether or not you continue funding the policy in the future. So what are your calls to action? Number one, I would analyze the pros and cons of keeping this insurance policy that you obtained and make an informed decision at some point soon. I'd hate to see you go for a long period of time paying insurance premiums for a policy that you don't need or that wouldn't benefit you. On the same token too, I would hate to see somebody cancel an insurance policy that since their health has changed or for whatever other circumstance, they wouldn't be able to obtain that same type of plan in the future. Another call to action, if you have not received your exemption, but you did buy private insurance and you want to be exempted, please go and apply for an exemption. You have until the end of 2022 to do that, and I would hate to see you get stuck at the back of the line or do things last minute and not get the exemption and be permanently opted into the program. If you're unsure whether or not you received your exemption from WA Cares, I would go to the Secure Access Washington website. From that website, you'll have the ability to log back into where you originally applied for an exemption, and you'll see a PDF that affirms whether or not you were exempted. Also, if you're a client we probably have that on file. We requested that as soon as you were exempted last year. But if you're not, Secure Access Washington is where you'd go. So hopefully that was helpful in clarifying some of the Employment Security Department guidance I've been getting, as well as what's on the website, and making an informed decision as to whether or not you should keep or cancel your long-term care insurance policy. If you have more questions, send me an email. We'll get you squared away, or you can drop them in the comments below. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the holidays. We'll talk to you later.